Welcome, Demgo Bucks. It has been a crazy, crazy week. It's been just nuts. There's been a massive shift in expectations in Michigan football. Are the Buckeyes on notice? We're going to talk about that. We definitely need to figure out what this means for the Ohio State and Michigan rivalry. Michigan beating USC this past weekend. It's just been pretty crazy. Matt, what do you think about all this? It's pretty awesome that.
I just wanted to talk about how interesting one play can be in a football game. Because even if we go back before we get to USC, let's go back to 2020 really quick. Michigan was playing Rutgers. You had 2 wins on the year at that point. I know it was a shortened season because of COVID, but you guys were playing Rutgers, and their field goal kicker missed relatively easy kick that would have probably got Harbaugh fired, and then this whole run would have never happened, which is really interesting. And then you go to the USC game where 2 guys just completely can't tackle Mullings. And is it Mullins or Mullings?
Mullings.
Yeah, he was just part of it was him being a beast, and part of it was USC guys can't tackle. But either way, that one play. They make a huge run, with a couple minutes left in the game. And then also the final play of the game was on a 4th down, right? It wasn't it 4th and 2 to get the final run.
4th and 1.
USC fans, of course, are complaining about a couple holds on that run, but
somebody's going to have to show me the holds, by the way. I looked. I'm sure I don't discount.
Broke one of my blinds.
Yeah, and then it's interesting that.
Oh, Siri, I said hello. Hi, Siri.
Dad.
Yes, I heard you, Siri.
What am I supposed to do?
Don't worry about it.
She ran into it.
That's fine.
She does no podcast etiquette.
So,
do.
Yeah, USC is just, their fans are upset that, Michigan had 47 run plays and not one of them, there was not one hold call the whole game.
There's no rule that says for so many run plays there must be.
Yeah. No, it is interesting though. As long as they're calling it the same way for both teams. I don't know if USC was called for any holdings or not, but usually in football games, it's generally they either let them play or they call penalties on everything. I've seen them both. But it was an incredibly close game, and the interesting thing is Vegas thinks that USC is still the better team based on power rankings. I know Josh Pate had his power ranking, had them, I think, 10 spots higher than Michigan, even after Michigan won, because it was a home game for Michigan. So you get 3 points for that. And then statistically, I guess, they were more balanced. They had, I don't know, I'm guessing they had more yards than Michigan. And I guess
they had more total yards.
Yeah.
And they did have the home team. Yeah.
Yeah, they had an impressive drive at the end. Even with crazy pressure from your defensive line all game, that he was still able to get a potential game-winning touchdown drive and great pass with a couple minutes to go. Unfortunately, they scored a little too fast, and unfortunately, their defense can't tackle. But it was weird though. Apparently, the whole second half they did a good job. They bottled up Michigan pretty much the whole second half until the end.
Yeah, and you know what? Kudos to you, actually. Last week when we were talking about this game, you were the one that actually said that Michigan might win. I was all in the dumps. And you were thinking, Michigan could actually beat USC. I think it was more of a reflection on USC you had on that. But
I did think that their defense was going to be good enough to deal with a running team.
I came out thinking that USC was even – they're still pretty good. They're not going to run into a team that runs an offense like Michigan very often. You look at the rest of their schedule.
Oh, yeah, they're probably not going to lose again.
They probably won't. Their hardest game is Notre Dame and who else? I know they play someone else.
Well, that's not even in the conference. So even if they lost Notre Dame, I don't think it would matter. So basically, they just have to hope for Michigan to lose two games. They need Michigan to lose 2 conference games. And they have to hope. I don't know what the tiebreaker would be, I guess. So if
Penn State, they play Penn State. So that could be a loss. But
I'm just saying, assuming that USC wins out, they would have to hope for Michigan to lose to Ohio State and one other team.
Very true.
in conference, and then they could potentially go to the Big Ten championship game, assuming Oregon. Because I guess if Oregon has one conference loss also, let's say at Ohio State, I'm assuming the next tiebreaker would be overall record, which then would, so that you probably have to have Oregon and Michigan lose twice.
Yeah,
So
I mean, if Michigan doesn't make it, Penn State doesn't make, I could definitely see Ohio State versus USC in the Big Ten championship game. But that's the big question. What did this mean for the Ohio State Michigan game? Because I'm thinking that this may have put the Buckeyes on notice a little bit. This Michigan game isn't going to be the cakewalk that everyone thought it was. Last week.
I mean,
hold on, real quick before we get to that though, let's talk about subscribing to MGO Bucks. Please, everyone, subscribe to the channel. We greatly appreciate it. We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribes by the end of the year, and we think we can do it. So please go ahead and subscribe to MGO Bucks. Greatly appreciate it. Sorry, go back to that. I think we're talking about how this is actually going to affect your thoughts on the game coming up. I think.
I mean, a lot of this season, a lot of this game, like the season, a lot of it's going to come down to attrition and how healthy both teams can be. And one of the things that I've really, I really am excited about this team, in addition to just being really fun to watch, they have a lot of depth at multiple positions.
You're talking about Ohio State, right?
Ohio State. I mean, Michigan has a lot of depth too, like on defensive line. But our depth is really good. I think that we have probably, the most. I mean, our running back depth, for instance, it's not like we have crazy depth there. I mean, we have 3 good players, 2 superstars. So it's not like a ton. I mean, we've had a couple of years recently where we've been down to our 5th string running back. Like when we played Georgia in the de facto national title game in the round 1 of the playoffs. I mean, it was really the title game, and we were down to our fifth string running back. I mean, the fact that
who even was that? Was that J.K. whatever?
I think Trainum. I think Chip Trainum may have been the guy. It may have even been one behind him. I think Dallas Hayden. Dallas Hayden was also in there too. So like we just have basically 2 average running backs that were.
You don't have to
going
worry
up against Georgia.
Depth anyway. I mean, you're not going to be worried about your 3rd string running back because you've got 2 superstars. But
as long as they stay healthy. But my point about the depth though was, so the concern against Michigan is there's two concerns. We want to make sure we have enough of our elite defensive linemen still healthy for that game. So for instance, Tyleik Williams missed the Marshall game. Marshall's not great, but they have a decent running quarterback and a good, some good running backs. And they played some, had a lot of tricky screens and run options. And, our defensive line without Tyleik was kind of questionable, especially early on. And then also our linebackers were playing like trash. So, depending on who the starters are at linebacker the rest of the year, the health of our defensive line and our linebackers being inexperienced and not great at taking angles. Like we have a couple, like Arbel Reese is not a starter at linebacker, but he's been playing more and more. I think he's probably one of the better ones that we have now, and hopefully he'll end up starting towards the end of the year or sooner rather than later, because some of our other guys just are not getting it done. And I just assume that we have all these 5-star guys at linebacker, like Sonny Styles. I mean, he is moving over from safety to linebacker, but he wasn't great at safety, and he's also hasn't been great at linebacker. And then we have the other 5-star linebacker, what's his name, who is just, he's good at pass rushing, but he's not great at tackling. What is his name? He was like top 10 overall.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do. And I can't remember.
Unfortunately, forgettable for me. But yeah, he hasn't been doing anything other than, he basically needs to be like a linebacker in a 3-4 set where he gets to blitz the quarterback every play, because that's all he's good at. He's really good at blitzing, but just as a linebacker trying to play standard scheme, trying to tackle, he's just not very good. And so, I'm really, really concerned about our linebackers trying to tackle Michigan running backs. What?
It's CJ Hicks.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm very worried that, luckily he hasn't been playing as much lately, but I'm worried about our linebackers being able to tackle good running backs. Luckily, we'll have a good warm up against the Iowa running back, who is probably one of the best running backs in the country this year. Have you seen how good he is?
He looked really good against Minnesota. We'll see how he looks.
Against everybody.
Hey, back to Ohio State real quick, though. I wanted to ask you a question because someone brought this up, and I can't really remember when. When was the last time a Buckeye team beat like a really good team? When was the last time they actually won a really big game?
A big game?
A big game, like not Notre Dame.
Let's see.
I mean, you got to go back pretty far, right?
Did we have any big wins in 2020?
In 2020, yes. You had one big win. I think that's probably the last time.
Clemson in 2020?
Yeah, Clemson
Yeah.
2020. That's a long time for.
Yeah, I mean, since then it's just like, we've beaten Penn State a few times and Notre Dame a few times. So it's just like, okay, but nothing special.
Yeah, that's true.
No, you're right. You're right. We haven't had a good win in a while. We're really overdue for some. That's one of the things I was going to go back to. Like,
I think Oregon is going to be. You have an opportunity with Oregon. I would say that's a big win, even though
people are going to downplay it, even because they are playing a lot better now. They definitely started off trash, so it'll be interesting to see what that game turns into be. But the thing that gets annoying with football rankings in general is people put so much emphasis on the past. So like, because for instance Ohio State hasn't had big wins recently, I feel like people are just discounting how good this team is. I mean, there is so much talent. People don't remember even like last year. Like, we had a pretty loaded team last year, and the first 3 games against scrubs, including Indiana, we were winning. We beat Indiana like 20-7. We have like all these low-scoring games against bad teams, and so now when we beat teams by 40 or 50 points, people are like, "Oh, well, it's just a cupcake." I'm like, "Yeah, but there's not a lot of years where you beat cupcakes by 40, 50 points every game. I mean, that's not super common, even for Ohio State." I can tell like when we have an elite offense. So I'm still a little worried about the defense. Like, I know we're basically returning everyone except for Mike Hall. So we, our linebackers that we return are new, but our linebackers last year weren't great either. So, I think we have a good chance of.
You sound pretty downtrodden for a guy whose team is like what, number 2 in the.
Yeah, country? I mean, I'm a little worried. We don't seem to have great pass rush, right now. I'm a little worried about that.
I've heard one thing about JTT. Now, granted.
Oh yeah, people are really down on him.
Are they? Because I haven't watched much Buckeye football, honestly, because I watch a little bit at the beginning of the game. And
he's pretty much invisible except for against Penn State. Then he shows out like an All-American. Yeah,
2 years ago.
I mean, so that guy is basically making a living off of being a 5-star recruit and having maybe the best Ohio State Buckeye performance by any single player of all time against Penn State. His statistics in that one game were better than any game anyone has ever had playing for Ohio State ever. So, and I'm not joking. Like, it really was. It was insane.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing.
But he's just been completely average ever since then.
He did everything he was going to do as a Buckeye in that one game.
He also was playing against a guy. So like their starter at tackle, I forget if it was right tackle or left tackle. The starter got hurt, so it was a true freshman also. So he was doing that against a guy with no experience. So that probably explains part of that.
So, question on the game coming up this week, Michigan State. So bad things generally happen when Ohio State plays Michigan State.
Yeah, don't remind me. We've had a lot of my worst games I've ever watched. In 1998, one of my favorite Buckeye years.
I'm not talking about going back that far. I'm just talking about recently. Like, Michigan State just absolutely gets crushed by Ohio State. I think it's a couple of times it's actually given Ohio State some fool's gold. Like, thinking like right before going into the Michigan game, like making them feel really good about themselves, and then all of a sudden they play a really super boring offense like Michigan's, and they lull them to sleep into a loss.
Well, Michigan State actually has a good coach now too.
Do
you remember Jonathan Smith as a quarterback? You know who he used to throw to?
Who?
He was the quarterback. He used to throw to Chad Ochocinco and TJ Who's Your Mama.
Did he really?
Yes.
I had no clue.
So anyway, and then he was a really good coach for Oregon State, and now he's at Michigan State. The guy is going to turn Michigan State around. He's already doing a good job. He could very easily be undefeated had his star receiver played against Boston College last week.
Yeah, Amos Automotive. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah,
going back to maybe pull him, and that'd be tough to actually pull JT though, wouldn't it? I mean, isn't there something else to pull?
Maybe on third downs to get pass rush. I mean, it's not like JT's getting pass rush.
Can't you just call a blitz and have CJ Hicks go in there and keep them both on the field?
Yeah. I mean, I guess you could do that too. Or usually on the rushman package, what they
catch on to that though. Every once in a while, they would.
Well, what they do is they take out the defensive tackles. Line up 4 defensive ends, and they call it the rushman package. So, but yeah, I mean, our defensive line needs some. We need some help getting pressure.
Real quick, let's go back to Michigan real quick. Question for you: do you think Alex Orji will improve as a passer?
Will he what?
Will Alex Orji improve as a passer? Because
he has to improve. He has to improve because you literally cannot do any worse than 32 yards. I think I was reading on Twitter. Tony Gerdeman was going back. He was trying to find a time when someone from Michigan had passed for like under 50 yards and won. And he's like, he went back like all the way to 2000. He couldn't find it.
Nope. You don't have to go back very far.
Yeah.
You don't have to go back very far. 2021, when Michigan played Washington, I believe.
Oh, it wasn't total yards. It was no first downs passing.
Oh, no.
That's what he was looking. So I don't know how many yards you got in the other game, but he went back all the way to 2000, and they had zero first downs passing the ball, which is pretty incredible.
When Michigan played Washington in 2021, it was early in the season. Cade McNamara's first full year starting, he only threw for something like 46 yards in that game because they just ran Blake Corum like pretty much the entire game. And the running game just bowled over Washington. So, and that's 2021, not last year, Washington.
Yeah.
I mean, that happened. I think JJ only threw for 60-some yards against Penn State last year in that famous Penn State game where they just ran.
They ran 24 times in a row.
Yeah. Now that seems like no big deal now after watching the game this past weekend. I mean, 32 yards passing. Oh my gosh. But you know what? I mean, if they hadn't got that big run by Mullings, they would have been passing because Orji did throw one like crossing pattern to the tight end to get them within 3rd and 1 because they had gotten a penalty that had brought them back to 2nd and 11. And so they were probably planning to pass with Orji on that last drive.
Planning on it. I mean, they didn't have a completion over like 1 foot. Like he had his passing yards, like every single passing play was behind the line of scrimmage except for one that was like 1 foot forward.
But what I'm saying in that final drive that Michigan had,
well, I mean, they would have had to, yes,
pass the ball. Yeah. I mean, it just so happened that Kalel Mullings actually ran for the 60-plus.
Yeah, the weird thing too is that the USC defense was still not playing 8 men in the box the whole time when they had zero threat throwing. Like, why wouldn't they have everybody in the box?
No, they had all 11 guys right up there on
the whole second half.
Play. That's why Mullings was able to run as far as he did because they had all those guys back there, and they were trying to slow him down, but then he busted out, and they had to chase him down from behind.
So how slow does the rest of the defense have to be, where one guy is holding around his waist, and then he just spins around in a circle, and then the other guy sort of bounces off of him? But like those two guys still slowed him down a decent amount. So, like you can't put all the blame on just those two guys. This should also be the fact that there was no one else on your team that was even close by or could catch him up when he was almost tackled. Like the gang tackling from USC, like it was just pathetic.
Yeah. Toby, let's read this real quick. That's pretty funny. Okay, Michigan fans, let's not be delusional. I love Michigan as much as you all, but we are not beating OSU this year. They reloaded, we didn't. Yeah, very true. Very true. But the possibility is still there now. It wasn't there before, but now if you're all of a sudden playing defense like the way we thought we were, when Wink Martindale isn't actually Don Brown 2.0. I mean, Wink actually isn't that stubborn, apparently. He's not just going to keep blitzing and not changing his defense like Don Brown did. He's actually going to say, oh, hey, we got our asses kicked by Texas. Maybe we ought to change something. And he clearly did. Yeah, we had a good run. That's very true. It may come to an end this year, but it's going to be possibly better than we actually thought right after that Texas game. But Matt,
yeah, well, what I would say.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say that, like, I mean, the Michigan game plan is simple. I mean, can they just continuously run the ball, and Ohio State might not be able to stop it because who knows with our linebackers, and I don't know if our defensive tackles. I mean, we have one elite defensive tackle who happened to be, missing in our last game because of an injury. So, Tyleek needs to be healthy in that game, and that's probably one of the bigger concerns. And then our linebackers need to step up big time between now and then. So, regardless, I'm guessing Michigan's still probably going to be able to run a decent amount. So the question is, can they hit one or two play action passes? And then also, is the Ohio? Now I'm pretty confident in our running game is going to do really well against you guys. Now the only issue is, will your defensive line be able to make enough? They're going to need like a Will Johnson pick six, which is very possible, or they're going to probably not, or probably, and they're going to need to have like a Mason Graham, just destroys the middle of the field and just causes a fumble, and they return a fumble for a touchdown. They're going to need defensive plays like that. And, you have enough playmakers on the defense that they can do that. I mean, that's not unreasonable.
We'll have to study the Akron defensive scheme that they came up with for that first half of the first game of the year.
Yeah.
See what happens. But, hey, question for you on that note. Who scares you more, Blake Corum or Kalel Mullings?
Well, Corum, just because, I mean, he's one of the best running backs I've seen at Michigan ever. And, Mullings has had a few good games. You're going to compare him to the best Michigan running back maybe of all time.
Yeah, I know. I'm just based on what you've seen. Yeah.
No, I mean, I like him. I think he's a great talent. His yards per carry, in limited sample size, it's like 8.4. It's really, really good. I mean, it's not as good as the Ohio State guys, but he's really, really good.
He's already beaten out Donovan Edwards, which
I mean, he's probably he has the potential to be the second best running back you guys have ever had. I mean, he has great potential. He's not Blake Corum good, but he's really, really good.
But hey, guess what? Do you remember what Superman's real name is?
What? No.
Kalel.
Oh, that's Superman. I thought you were talking about another nickname from one of your Michigan players. But yes, I know.
Yeah, Superman.
Was he named after Superman?
I don't know, but my gosh,
you're a Michigan fan and you don't know that?
I need to Google it because I don't think. How would you even know that?
No, I remember reading that and wondering myself actually if that was the case, but I didn't follow up.
Yeah, the son of Joel.
He's a stud. It'll be really it's a great matchup. Your strength is the running game. The Ohio State weakness, I think, is the run defense. I mean, it's not bad, but it's definitely not our strength right now. I would say the pass defense is probably the best we've had in a really long time. Probably, I would compare with 2019, which is probably the best of my lifetime in pass defense.
I would love, in Toby's comment here, we may have a shot at beating Oregon after the OSU win. That would be something to go 10-2 without a passing game. I would love for both Ohio State and Michigan to beat Oregon. Just all the Pac-12 teams.
Yeah. The Oregon thing, the thing with them too is Dan Lanning gets so much hype. I mean, the guy has done nothing yet to deserve any of this hype. Last year, people were going crazy about him. He loses to Washington, and then they still go crazy about him, and he loses to Washington again. That's and then this year, of course, they're like, oh well, he's a great coach. Oregon's going to be amazing, and then they struggle against both Idaho teams. And then, then they have a good game after that. And then everyone's like, Oregon's back. I mean, I'm sure that they're, a very fine team. But I think Dan Lanning, to me, he needs to prove it before I'm willing to give him any any real credit here. He has not had a single, we were talking about Ohio State not having good wins because our best wins have been Penn State and Notre Dame the last few years. But Dan Lanning doesn't have any marquee wins. None. Zero.
Yeah. Toby, you might.
No, I think Oregon has improved lines, but I don't think that they're not to the level of
it's like
top Big Ten teams yet, let alone
and USC had
SEC
teams too, but they couldn't
yeah. I mean, USC did look improved. Like they were definitely better than they've been in the past by a lot, but they're still not there yet.
Well, and so Ohio State, and maybe this will be our last topic for tonight. We're 25 minutes in, but Ohio State has a pretty tough stretch. You mentioned, and I looked it up too. That's 4 games. They play Iowa, then they play and this is all back to back. Iowa, at Oregon, Nebraska, then at Penn State. That's a brutal four game stretch.
Yeah, Iowa is basically Michigan this year. They have a killer running game. Their running back is even better than yours. Probably one of the best running backs in the country. And then they have a really good defense. And the funny thing with Iowa is every year, even when they have good teams, they always lose to Iowa State. And then people write them off because for whatever reason, Iowa never beats Iowa State. I don't know why. They just have something there where they just can never get it done.
Yeah, it's funny. I can't wait for Iowa to play Ohio State. I would, if I wasn't just so crazy, I would say Cade McNamara is getting a second shot at the Buckeyes.
Yeah, I mean, and that's going to be a tough one too because I mean, we have to worry about not only our offense is our offense actually good to go up against a good Iowa defense, and it'll be a good test against our running game. Like it'll be basically the Michigan running game with a similar passing game to Michigan too. Like they have no passing game and a really good running back, so it's the same. It's like almost the same exact team, honestly. I mean, you guys have some bigger stars on defense, but their defense overall is probably about the same as yours.
That's like Buckeye kryptonite right there.
So that'll be a really, really good test. Like people are worried about Oregon. I'm willing to bet right now. Like I would bet you that we're going to have a closer game against Iowa than we do against Oregon. Plus, that's the game before Oregon. So you're going to potentially be overlooking it a little bit, even though the coaches are going to be trying to warn them. But that's going to be the overlook game and potentially the harder game based on the matchups. Like Oregon has the better overall offense, but they're more of a passing team, and that's our strength. Whereas Iowa's running, and that's what I think are going to, the teams that are going to give us the big problems this year are going to be like the elite running offenses. So, I think Alabama would be a hard matchup, and I think Michigan and Iowa will be hard matchups. Penn State has a good running game this year. I mean, I still don't know about Penn State. They've played bad against some teams. I think they had one really close win earlier this year, but then, last week they had a big blowout win. They're ranked pretty high. They have good metrics. So, I usually don't take them seriously, but, you really have to. Every year is a new year. You have to see, they have 2 talented running backs, a quarterback who is a 5-star, who may finally be good. I just thought the main reason I didn't think that Penn State would ever win the big one, besides Franklin always being a coach who always screws up in close games, is the fact that they legitimately don't have any good receivers, I don't think.
Yeah, that could be an issue, and there is the James Franklin effect. That's real.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll have to see. We'll have to see if last year they tried to make the quarterback, they tried to make him like the focal point of the offense, and that was just so stupid.
The first-year quarterback, that was dumb. Yeah, especially when they had good running game. They should have been focusing way more on the running game.
Yeah, I mean, even when I wanted them to win last year, I kept saying, why are they using their quarterback this way? Why are they passing?
Oh, the other thing is they also have a new offensive coordinator this year who's actually good.
Yeah, that's
the other thing. So Penn State's a legitimate threat, probably a bigger threat than Oregon. Iowa is a big threat.
Nebraska.
Michigan. I mean, we have a tough. I don't think Nebraska's going to be. I mean, when you have a good quarterback and a decent defense, they're always going to be like they have the puncher's chance. But it's like we occasionally lose like a game you shouldn't. They have like a decent chance, not decent, like 5% chance to throw a Hail Mary. They might connect. I'm not super worried about them, obviously, but I mean, I'm worried about Iowa. I'm worried about Oregon. I'm worried about Penn State. I'm worried about Michigan. And that's before we play the Big Ten title game. And then, you're lucky enough to win the Big Ten, and then you have a bye, and then you still have 2 more elite games in the playoffs, probably Georgia, Alabama in round 1, and then the other one, whether it's Texas or Georgia in round 2. Like, you're going to be playing such a gauntlet this year. It's just going to be incredible. That's why, like everyone is talking about like the new upstarts like Ole Miss and Tennessee being good, but I don't think those teams are going to have. I think they're going to do well most of the year, and they'll probably make the playoffs. But I don't think that either of those teams have recruited well enough to have the depth to compete with Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, and I mean, really those 3 teams. Like, I don't think anyone else has really had recruited the depth to be able to compete with that.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Hey, Chris. Yeah, he says he's more excited for the Georgia and Bama game than the Buckeye game.
Oh, of course, yeah.
The Buckeye game are they on at the same time?
Yeah, both at 7:30.
Yeah, but it's still Michigan State. I mean, you can, if you have YouTube TV, you can use the multiple.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to try to watch them both at once.
But I get it. It's going to be rough. I think the Buckeyes are going to get up on.
It opened at like 24 and a half. I think it's down to 23. So people are actually taking the Michigan State points, and they have a good defensive line, and I think they're number 2 in the country in sacks actually. So
yeah,
hard to judge that based on a weak schedule, but they do seem to have a pretty good pass rush. So that'll be at least somewhat of a test against their offensive line. That you were talking about the tackles the other day. Like the left side, the middle, our left tackle, left guard, and center are elite. Right guard is sort of sharing time between 2 people, and our right tackle is good against good run blocking, but his pass protection is very questionable against elite pass rushers. So still worried about him. But I think as long as they're good at run blocking, and if you're going up against an elite pass rusher, you can scheme that to some degree. You either throw in an extra tight end or running back to chip block, or you just do quick passing.
Yeah,
RPOs and stuff like that.
Very true. Very true. All right, man, let's wrap it up. Thanks a lot, Matt. That was pretty awesome. Loved hearing all the wisdom about Alex Orgy and how Michigan's passing game is going to improve from game to game. I don't know that that's possible, but we will have to see. But anyway, thanks everyone for joining. Thanks to everyone in the chat. We will talk to you all later. Go Blue.
Go Bucks.